Porras,
okay, from Bellevue is high.
So that you can see the screen or no?
She told me that her presentations are like the sermon in church. Then she's going to pass the plate.
I am the offering. You can tithe to me. I'm your pastor.
The lunch money. And she's going to talk to us about engaging our communities through language learning.
Welcome. So I'm Piper Porras. My contact information is right here. Here's my website, and there's a little button where you can contact me. So if you have any feedback for me, if I wasn't clear enough about something, or you want to inspire me to better something that I'm talking about, I'm always open to those ideas. You also can steal a bunch of free stuff on there that I have by modalities for the Spanish teachers in here, because I have like a listening section, reading section, conjugation. There's a whole menu that I have stolen from other websites, or rather borrowed. Yes, this is not like a copyrighted thing. I'm not getting paid for it. So I want to talk about engaging our communities through language learning, because community is what everybody thrives off of. And I'm going to put her little shout out today on blast. My student teacher, Abigail Seremuga, is here. And so she serves as an example about how communities can change how we feel. She's with me for a full year this year through the UNO TAP program. Every morning when I walk in, seeing her face, it blesses my day. And she's a second set of eyes that when I'm like, did that literally just take place? Yes, it did. And yes, that was offensive. So community allows us to have, yeah. And then we engage together about like, here's how I handled that 14 years into this, and I feel like it wasn't the best. What would you have done? And so community changes everything for people. And so thank you for being with me for this year. You're wonderful. And she's moving to Ecuador. So if you want to like talk to her about that and maybe some community exchange you could be doing from here with her in Ecuador, maybe. Okay, so I want to just tell you that these are the things that I do, what I'm about to get into. How do I engage my community? But this is with anything in life. You should never listen to a speaker and try to copy exactly what they're doing, because it works for me, and it's what I thought would work best. So today I want to challenge you all to be thinking about this question here. How can I engage my community? And the three elements that I would encourage you to consider are, what's the location of your school or the building that you're working in? What are the demographics around you? And how much time do you have to put into this? If you just had a baby and you just got off of maternity leave, you have to consider time, especially if you're breastfeeding. Are you kidding me? That like took up 4 years of my life. So there's things that you need to think about when you're considering engaging your community. So my conclusion for myself personally, when I thought about location, demographics, and time, I thought, oh my gosh, Bellevue East is situated right next to the Bellevue Public Library, and nobody in my building was utilizing the Bellevue Public Library. It's a small building, and you wouldn't notice it. It's kind of insignificant, but it's precious when you get inside. And I thought, oh, there's tons of stay-at-home parents in the area with small children. So I started a bilingual reading program with my Spanish 5. We could literally walk to the library. And so I didn't really know what I was doing. I'm going to tell you a secret. I'm a person who jumps into the water, and then I see if I can swim. Sometimes you drown, and you're like, eh. So, thank God for Abby, because this year when we try things in class, I'm like, oh my God, I don't know what we're doing here. So 20 participants is what we had that first year, and it was from birth to toddler age. I didn't know the research behind it. I was like, is this even like really doing anything? We're reading to babies. But then I looked online and it was. Google Scholar, okay, I wasn't just Googling, is reading to babies useful? But on Google Scholar, yes it is, from birth through any age, actually. I mean, reading aloud is excellent. And so this is where Spanish 5 started. We had 20 kids that would faithfully come. These stay-at-home moms were so relieved to just hand their kids off for a minute, so we were like blessing the community at the same time we were teaching literacy skills to small children. Then years 2 through 4 evolved. They changed my schedule. They moved Spanish 5 to be early, like mid-morning, like 9:30 in the morning. I'm a mom. That's when kids take naps. So I was like, oh my gosh. So I emailed all the parents, and they're like, yeah, that's nap time. Okay, so we have 0 participants. So again, I went back to location, demographics, time. I have to be doing this at 9:30 in the morning. Like, I don't have another Spanish 5 class. Well, Wake Robin is 4 blocks. It's an elementary school. So I wrote the principal, and I told her about the value of language. You know how you have to sell your elective course to everybody. Grades K through 2, they were open to us teaching kindergarten, first grade, second grade. The principal was amazing, and she was very open to this. So then we had 50 plus participants all of a sudden. Like, it had more than doubled. And it's going so well, and I love it. But this is what works for me, and this is my community. So, with that said, I want you guys to take just a second and to take out your pen and paper and to engage with somebody perhaps that you don't know next to you. Location, demographics, and time. So when we look at location, are there any schools near my building outside of my own? You could even consider your own building though. Do you have a huge ELL population that this could be beneficial to do some sort of a language exchange? Is there a nursing home? Do not forget the elderly. In most cultures, especially in the language that I teach in Spanish, Latinos do not forget their elderly, and this lends itself to a cultural exploration comparing our culture to another culture. Homeschool. There are homeschooled kids that would love to have some socialization, and they also might not know how to do it. So you guys could be the facilitators in opening those doors, or your own school. When you look at demographics, ELL population, do you have a booming population in your community, in your school, with which you could do a language exchange? Is there a university nearby? Is there a target language community nearby? Omaha South lends itself beautifully to being just right there in an entire neighborhood in which you could do a lot with the Spanish language. And who around me would benefit from us? That's the beauty of community, is you can make your own community. And all of us are hungry for community. And our students need this modeled for them. Because in their adult lives, they're going to have to be establishing communities in many different places. And then time. Do you want to do it for a semester? Do you want to do it for a full year? Are you going to use class time? Or do you want to make this something where it's on a Saturday morning for a quarter to see how it goes? Language club time, if you're the French club sponsor, Spanish club sponsor. I sponsor Latina leaders, and so we do some community outreach with, what do they call it? The mobile food pantry. That's something we're looking at, where the girls can go and translate and utilize their skills. Or on a professional development day. We know those can be sometimes, politely said, a bit of a snoozer at times when you're hearing the same thing. So if you're like, listen, building principal, I understand that you want to teach me 10 ways to, I don't know, engage my learners, and it's the 10 things you heard the last 10 years. You could be like, I need to just step out for the PD day, and I'm going to go read for 4 hours to different classes with my students. And you rent a van, and you just go have the best PD day ever. So there's lots of different ways you could do this. So I want to give you just a couple of minutes to talk to somebody around you or to make your own notes. What does building your community look like for you to take your language to the masses, or even 4 people that can? So give yourselves a minute.
We have in-school daycare, tiny rooms. We could go to them.
That's awesome.
I have had my ELL population, like we've worked with them, but not with reading. We played Uno. And then we could go, we have 7 elementary schools we could probably tap into any of them.
I think the main thing, honestly, the venue that I explore a little bit, because my special interest is like we volunteer with the injury and we teach programs in 2 different elementary schools, and we do like global inclusive project. Like, I'm trying to think, we did the Operation Superville, I've heard of that before. So like they interpreted for families that they like got their school supplies in the beginning of the year, so that was great. But so I mean, they're like my special interest kids don't do stuff, but my regular, like my class students, like they
during
like
the day.
Exactly, it's not during
They go to
the
tiny rooms.
That's awesome. But yeah, one of the things I'm thinking is we don't have any of that. Our school is very isolated from like you. It's not the populace, it's going to be, but it's only going to get worse as well. We're going over millions I mean, it's maybe 7 people to drive.
I wonder if
drive-
instead of like little kids, like
here's the thing. Our Spanish 1 classes are like middle. I mean, and they're like, and we kind of did a sort of partnership in the beginning of like okay, with the Zoom video. We had like pen pals or something. Like my Spanish 3 class got a Spanish 1 student, and then they together had to do like a little Flipgrid like introduction, and then to get to know each other. And then we went to the lecture hall like a couple weeks later, and we actually like Zoom videoed with the Mexico class. So with the Spanish 1 class, they got to come like be part of that too. And the Spanish 1 kids are like, it's a service honestly, like to get them to see like, wow, somebody can actually do something with Spanish, because like she has like 9, IEPs and discipline issues, and like, it's a class of like 30 something kids, and most of them, it's like trying to keep them awake and
all right, guys,
drugs and
we're gonna
class,
bring
so
it back in.
something if we could,
Did any ideas come to mind about how you can
more
engage your community?
attachment to it,
Raise your hand if anything came to mind that you're like, okay, I see where I could go with this. Raise your hand if you have had an idea already on the back burner, but now you have some mental space to think about it. Yeah? Okay. So let me know if I can ever assist you with that, but even what you just did is where it starts. You talk to somebody else, and you just tell them all the ideas you're having, and they'll help you organize it. Because this is what happened with when I built this bilingual literacy program. I went to the French teacher. She's a talker. I'm a talker. We basically just like, when we're together. And I was like, here's what I envisioned, da-da-da. And we just kept talking, and I was writing. And this is how it was birthed. In 15 minutes in my classroom. And it wasn't even what we were going to talk about. So that's kind of organically how things can grow. This is a picture of what it looks like. This is the Bellevue East Spanish 5 AP Bilingual Literacy Program. It's a mouthful. So what I encourage is find your vision. How do you envision this looking? For us, it looks like this. So my students go, and it's a beautiful structure being in an elementary school, because at the library we just kind of sat on the floor, which was a good place to start, whatever. But now we have tables, and we have Apple TVs, and there's so much more that we can do. But my students come in, and I'll be showing you all of the elements that we utilize to put this together. But they learn how to delegate, because I also want to teach them life skills. So each week they have a lesson plan. And by week 3, they're usually like, Senora, this is so much freaking work to teach. Do you do this all the time? Is this how you plan? Yes, and I do it for 150 minutes a day. It's not for 30 minutes on a Wednesday. And they're kind of like, oh my God. So they appreciate teachers a lot more. But I've built this structured lesson plan for them, and I walk them through how we as teachers, in theory, are supposed to engage them, and how learning should come to life. So each week they have to create, come to life. They have to create a coloring activity, and I give them a template for that. All of this is on my website also if you want to steal stuff. It's under Spanish 5, Bilingual Literacy. All the templates are right there. They have to create an activity because they have to engage their learners, and it has to be tactile, visual, and I have to be able to see them in action. Because they try to skirt that, and they're like, we're thinking we're just going to maybe like say the words and they act them out. Cool that Simon says at your dinner table. That's not what we're doing. Like, you're going to do something with them that they can touch and move. And yes, you can still have actions and words, but little kids work really well with having something in their hands. And they can take those activities back to their classroom as well. And they can take their coloring sheets home to their parents. And little by little, just continue to spread the love of Spanish for what we're trying to teach. So that's what that looks like on a weekly basis. We do it every Wednesday, and it's 30 minutes. And we carpool. There's another lesson. Let's save the environment. We don't all need to drive our cars. I know that you want to feel special because you drive a better car than I do. Most of them do. But they just want to show off their new 2018 truck. I'm like, dear God, I drive a 1998 Honda. So I want them to learn how to save the environment. So we carpool, and we all go together, and it's a good community building activity, even just in that. They get to know each other really well. So I'm a checklist kind of person. I feel like many women are. Like, we have 18,000 tabs open at once, and we just want to close them all by doing everything. Here's how, in my mind, I organize, and I have flexibility too. When you're working with little small children and high schoolers, you do have to have some flexibility. But this is kind of, if I follow these 7 steps, everything will be in order. And then sometimes it still isn't, but you just go with it. We had one girl last year, one of the participants, bless her heart, really struggled with behavioral problems, and my students did not know what to do. And we employed every method. I would tell them, okay, this is what I do when I have learners that can't focus. But hers was to the point where she was like running away, and we would have to chase her down the hall, and the teachers were kind of like, we don't know how to control her either. Okay. So I asked for an iPad and put some apps on there for her, and she liked it. But we can't do that for everybody. But so that's an example of flexibility where you're like, I just don't know where to go with this. 1, permission slips. We live in a is that legal world. So you want to make sure the parents know you're taking their kids out of the building. Because what if you had a high school student dating an older man? I'm not saying this has happened, but maybe it did. And she says she's leaving the building, like leaving with an adult human being, and it's just no. So you want the parents to know your child is exiting this building. So I don't know if this strange guy is going to be parked down there like, beep, beep, come on. No. So I need parents to know that we're leaving the building. So I have permission slips. They're on hand. I give those to the office with the carpool list. Also, so that the deans know, like, is Jessica getting into a car with Brian and Fred? Yeah, they're all in a carpool together. So you just want to clear that up so you don't have problems. The materials for us are children's books. That's all we need, children's books. I make the students be in charge of what they are supposed to bring every day. I think in our society we have taken so much responsibility away from students, and that's hurting them. So they need to make sure that their folder is in line. Do they have their lesson plan? Do they have their activities? And then they put it into my little cart, and I will pull it to the library for them. Carpool lists. I also have those posted up outside the room, because I don't know if your students do it, but mine act like they've never seen these sheets before. So I can see them being like, your room was locked, I showed up, so I just went to Taco Bell. Nobody, are you kidding me? So the carpool lists are outside, inside, linked online. You can't say you didn't know who you were supposed to ride with. Passports. All the little participants get their own passport, so they see what it's like to travel abroad, because some of them never have. And some of them have. We have ELL learners that come, and they're like, I have one of those, and we talk about it, and brings them into the conversation. So you're not having to spend much of your own money. I have a huge stack of old Spanish books. That's one of the prizes. If they get their passport stamp each week, they get a free book in Spanish at the end. I also asked my building principal, hey, would you buy me this giant bag of recuerdos de Guatemala? I found it online, and it's full of just cool stuff from Guatemala. Worry dolls and little balls that you can like kick and whatever. It wasn't that expensive, but I didn't want to pay for it. So he did. That was so nice of him. So they also get to pull out of the bag something authentic if they get enough stamps on their little sheet. Many of my high schoolers, though, they will come to me and say, we just promised kids candy next week if they knew, blah, 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 blah. Can you get that for me? No, I can't, but now you've learned a lesson in telling things to people that you've promised. But Walgreens is having a special. So you just give that right on back to them. I am not buying that for you, but okay. Book charts. So my groups know exactly what they're reading each week, and I can give those charts to you, and you can just change them for your classes. A lesson plan guide, and then templates on my website. Sometimes when we tell kids, hey, here's what you're going to do, they can visualize it, and some of those kids can just go. Some of them literally need to download, how did you do this? Some of my students never use my templates, but I would say the majority do, because they're not quite sure where I'm going with what I'm saying. So they can click on it, it'll open up, and they just change it to fit whatever book they were reading. Yeah? Does that look doable? Mm-hmm. And this is the thing. You have to, when you plan, assume that you're the most rebellious student in the group and plan from there. I was naughty in high school, okay? I skipped school all the time. So I have to think like her, how I used to be in 9th grade, yeah? Not like when I was in college and I studied all the time and I had a 4.0, the 9th grade paper. So think like that, kid, and then you plan accordingly. So here's what it visually looks like to have a bilingual reading program. Here's the passport. And so it's all in Spanish also. My students keep those passports so that their participants don't lose them. Because if you give this to a kindergartner, I don't know where it's going to go. So they keep a hold of those. But as you see on number 3, if they make it to 3, I have these little candies on hand. They get a candy. If they make it over there, dulces. This is a sorpresa. I named it surprise because I legit didn't know what I was going to give that year. So I'm like, surprise! It might just be 2 high fives. You get 2 of these. The kids are like, that seems deceitful. It is. Okay. We get to dance for 5 minutes. I don't know, make something up. And then a book if they make it all the way around. But my students, they have to think each week, it's part of their lesson plan, what do these kids have to do to get a stamp? Like, what? So we talk about that. You're the teacher now, so you show me what it looks like to give purposeful and meaningful learning to a kid. What would you ask if you were the teacher? Because you are. So that's how we work our passports. This is just a little glimpse of what our kindergarten library looks like. I haven't spent any money on this. I applied for a grant, and they bought me all the books. So I encourage you all, listen for every grant available in Omaha. Have you heard of the South Omaha Teachers Foundation one that just came out? It was for $1,000. I can't remember the name. It's like RVP. I can look in my files, but I applied for that. It was $1,000, and I desperately need wireless keyboards. Yeah? So apply for everything. Worst case scenario, you only get half of what you applied for. It's still better than nothing. So all of these were purchased, and this year I tried to really pull in a lot of cultural books. So there's a book on Loteria, the famous Mexican bingo game, and it's super cute. There's one on Frida, Celia Cruz right here, La Virgen de Guadalupe. Beautiful visuals that incorporate culture. So my level 5s are learning about culture through these kindergarten books. And for the kindergartners, it's very visually appealing. So there's that. And then you have your basic like numbers and first words and so forth.
Hyper?
Yeah.
The passport, just clarify, I don't know if I understood right. Is the passport for your AP students?
It's for the participants. It's for the kids.
Okay.
So like an example question my AP kids might say to their students is, next week you have to be able to count to 5, so don't forget to study. Then you have some groups that keep their bar really low and they're like, tell me one color. Okay, you do the easy teacher. All right, which is okay. We all loved the easy teacher where you knew the A+ was guaranteed. So, and then I kind of have to reel in the kids that are just like here, where they're like, I want you to tell me one of Frida Kahlo's contribution. Like, no, okay, we're talking about what her paintings contributed to Mexico. They're really small children. So there's that. So you kind of have to help them also gauge their audience. Because we've seen everything from kindergarten, well, we had the toddlers and babies first. We didn't do passports with babies and toddlers. Like, I didn't know what to do with that because, I don't know, that would be on the parents' shoulders and they're already tired. So we did kindergarten. I try to keep that very basic, like, can you name 3 colors? Or can you spot something rojo in this room? To try to go back to that because they have their little coloring sheets. So we can talk more about that. Here's what the planning document looks like. So this is kind of the boring part, I know, like the planning, but it's structured just like kind of how a teacher would do it. We have our intro song. What's our passport question? What's your book for the week? Again, think like the kid who wasn't listening, okay? So they have to write what their book title is so they know which one to grab. You'd be surprised if that wasn't there. They'd be like, I don't know what we read. Really? So it was yesterday. Who's the group leader? We also have to delegate responsibility. Don't stare at each other because you're confused about who's doing what. Then we do a little bit of TPR, like actions with vocab, coloring book page, and always I tell them every teacher has something in her back pocket or his back pocket. I have a set of animal cards for every group. If they get stuck, pull out the animal cards and do something. You always have to have something in case. Week 2, song, passports, go over the vocab, read the book, and they have to put in sample questions of how do I engage my learners. So, and sometimes they struggle with that, like I don't know what to ask a kid when I'm reading about Celia Cruz. And I tell them, ask the kids, do you dance with your parents at home? Do you like music? Do you like azúcar? And they're like, what's azúcar? Sugar. Yeah. So just ways that as you're reading, you can pull the kids into the text. And then they have to have an activity. It's engaging. It's visual. It incorporates the vocab. They start to learn how to teach. So hopefully we get some language teachers out of this. It's basically like methods in 12th grade. Okay. Any questions before we move on to one more thing I want to show you that I absolutely love? And it's way easier the next thing. Do you have any questions at all?
How many weeks did you say you do this?
I do it semester 2,
Okay.
and it's every Wednesday for 16 weeks. Yeah.
I'm sorry I came late, but what is the benefits that your AP student will get from such an activity in terms of for their AP class? What
I'm totally kidding, but not kidding. It's great birth control. They're kind of like, oh my God, kids are so intense. Yes, they are. Think about that on prom night. So they learn about working with small children. They learn to delegate. They learn how to work in a group. They learn responsibility. They learn the structures of how do you teach a language. I feel like there's a lot of empathy for us teachers once they step into this role. There's so many. And I feel like they're also engaging in the text that's very basic, but they're learning a lot of new cultural elements. So there's a lot of benefits. I could write them out for you if you email me. Type them all. It'd be good journaling. Okay. Yeah.
When I used to teach AP, we had a program like that, like during the day where they would go and they would teach. And I was so surprised at how many holes were kind of filled in, like just things that, oh yeah, we learned that years ago, and we still have to know how to say what the date is and tell time, because your kids are still, like, they, you know, will still make mistakes with it, like they literally just don't.
Foundational elements, like
right.
all of it, yes.
And until you actually have to explain something to someone else, a lot of times it still hasn't become theirs until they've actually had to sit down and think like, wow, this is important, I guess, for me to know this. Or I didn't think about that aspect of identity, which is one of the themes for my AP, until I had to try to explain this cultural concept to somebody else, even if it's a simple one that a small student could understand.
Exactly. So the overarching is community. Like, we're establishing these little kids, and I tell my students that they look up to you from day one because you're older and you're a high schooler, and for them it's like, oh my gosh. Yes, and for the high schoolers, I'm like, conduct yourself like somebody you would want your little brother or sister to follow after. So I feel like it's all encompassing. There's so many things. So, anything else? Okay. If you have any questions, you can always shoot me an email. So here's this simpler part. We're just going to talk about engaging our building. So within our school, what does that look like? And that's my school, Bellevue East. So the Sé Simpático, or the Be Kind movement, which has just burst forth in Nebraska. That's our school out on the field. Our guest speaker, I think he's the superintendent of Ralston. I don't want to get that wrong, but I'm pretty sure. Yes. Okay. They came in, they lost their son to suicide. There was a lot of just ugly things going on behind the scenes. I was so moved by that. And I was like, we have to teach kids this skill. And you would think that if you tell your kid, be nice, that would be enough. No, you have to model that. And you have to show them how to actively be kind to somebody else. It doesn't just happen. You have to make that choice every morning. So after I listened to their speech and was just in tears, and I was like, what kind of a welcome back to school was that? Like, I was just shattered. It was tough to listen to. What do you do with that? Because I feel like pain always produces growth. So as a teacher, I can be pained by this, and I can hurt, and I can have empathy and sympathy. Where am I going to go with this? So here's where I went with it. This is what came to mind. Spanish 5 again, you can do this with any level, but I'm like, we are going to start to be more cognizant of our neighbors in classes. And I tell them from day one, I want you to look for that kid that looks sad. I want you to look for that girl that sits alone. Sorry, I get emotional because some of our kids, they hurt deeply, daily. And you have a chance to make a difference. So, this is what we do. Motivational phrases in Spanish. They have to come up with the translation in English, which I have a guide for this. They come up with a secret agent of kindness alias. So what's your secret name going to be? And they have fun with that. They get really into it. And this also, are you familiar with Ferial Pearson?
Yeah.
Okay, she's all about this. You can follow her Facebook page, and you can get deeply into becoming one of her secret agents.
And cry a lot.
And yes, she posts so many things that I'm just shattered. Then I have to get up and be like, hey, what are we going to do with this? Okay, name and room number of the recipient goes on the back, and I'm in charge of that. And it takes me like 4 minutes. I have my stack of cards, and I just type in last names, and I look where they're at in their last period class. So this is what this looks like, and here's how we structure it. I printed off 165 motivational phrases in Spanish. And so each week, 3 of those pop up on the board. So I choose 3 myself, and I just type them in. Doesn't take long. This gives them a chance to reflect. I tell them, you look at these 3 phrases, and you should have been paying attention all week, because we do this on Friday. Who's your first person that comes to mind that would fit into one of these categories? So, and I tell them, if you don't have anybody this week, I could name 20 people off the top of my head that I have seen hurting. Just yesterday, I said to a girl, I love having you in here. She starts bawling, anxiety, depression. She was hospitalized last year. I didn't know any of that. And by just saying, I love to see you every day, all of that came out. And now she's on my radar, like I'm watching her. So, and I sent her a card too. So what does that look like at your school for #Say Simpatico? I can share mine with you. I can give you all the resources to send out those cards every week. But if you have another idea, I would love to hear it. And I would love for you to make that your challenge for this semester to get it going. Even if it's sloppy that